80s and 90s Sports podcast where I, Richard Harris, talk about why I prefer the sports of today. No, I don't. I prefer the sports of the 80s and 90s to today. I don't know why I've done that now two times in a row. I guess because I'm delirious. Today's topic again is college football, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm an up. I'm outraged. First of all, today they determined who was going to be the four teams to play in the playoffs that will lead us to a college national champion. And they came up with four teams that, in their eyes, they thought were worthy. In my eyes, I think only, I don't know. I think two of them were worthy. The third one is in because of circumstance. But no question, the fourth one is only there because of reputation of their conference, their coach, and because people might say that there's really no championship without the SEC. And that bothers me. And they won't admit it. I thought it was a great question that Greg McElroy asked about it. I thought Joey Galloway's answer about it was apropos as well, because it would be insulting if that was the truth. But I prefer the sports of the 80s and the 90s because people will say, well, you have two teams that are undefeated, Washington and Michigan. And in the 1991, I believe, Rose Bowl, Washington played Michigan when Washington was undefeated. And I think Nebraska played Tennessee. No, not 1991. Nebraska played somebody. But I remember Washington 1991 and Georgia Tech. Sorry. I think Georgia Tech was the other team that was undefeated, but they didn't play against each other. And it was a split championship. But clearly, Washington's team that year was a juggernaut, thus leading to us having what we have now. That the systems of the past created the system of today. Because people were tired of trying to say on paper who was the champion. And there's several years where you had two champions that were worthy of being national champion. When USC blitzed, crushed Oklahoma, they were both unbeaten, and then LSU played in the Sugar Bowl and beat somebody, but they didn't play USC, so therefore one was one champion, one was another champion. So then you say, why do you prefer the system of the 80s and 90s? Firstly, the reason why I would prefer the system of the 80s and 90s is that the system in the 80s and 90s, they would never have let a undefeated team not be a part of the discussion. They would have said Washington and Michigan and Florida State are undefeated. And they wouldn't have cared that Florida State won its championship in its conference with a third string quarterback with defense. They would have rewarded. They would have said they deserve a piece of the championship if they happen to win their bowl game. And there might have been a +1. Wasn't a +1 then. It's not a +1 now. But for 3 teams to be undefeated and only 2 of them get a chance to play for a championship is a joke. And here is why. And I haven't seen any shows after they announced the 4. I turned it off. But here is why. College football today is hampered, is possessed with the notions that the kids think about themselves more so than they do the teams. And as I blogged yesterday, and I told you, there are 4 teams that will have their players play in the bowl season. The remaining teams playing in the 42 bowl games, so that would be 39 bowl games, won't. The remaining teams will be lucky if their players say, I want to play again. And so Georgia and Florida State are scheduled to play each other in a bowl game, the Orange Bowl. It's a prestigious bowl. But the reality is, Florida State players might say, I don't want to play. We didn't get picked in to play in the bowl. Georgia players might say, I don't want to play. We didn't get picked to play in the bowls. Now, Ohio State is playing Missouri. Ohio State players may say, we only lost 1 game to the number 1 team in the country. We're no different from Texas and Alabama and all the other 1-loss teams. I don't want to play. Missouri will say, well, it's an opportunity to play against Ohio State and maybe help our NFL draft status. Or they might say, some of their best players might say, you know what? I've had enough this year. I don't want to play. And coaches in schools can't say spit about it. Coaches in schools will say, okay, you don't want to play. It sucks for us, but you don't want to play. What do you do? And so that's the state of college football. In the 80s and 90s, did the players care about their safety and their well-being and their health and their draft status? Absolutely. But they played. Now, Herschel Walker played in a bowl game after he won the Heisman, and he was fabulous. Bo Jackson played. Everybody played. Troy Aikman played. Rodney Peete played. Everyone played. No one was thinking about, man, if I don't play, I'm not going to get drafted in the first round. Oh, I need to improve my 40 time. Because bowl games is a showcase. And that message has not been drilled into the heads of the players. Because a bowl game is an opportunity for you to play against somebody from a different conference, somebody from a different league, somebody who is pretty darn good. I can think of many games where players are playing against teams, better players, and they showed out in the bowl game, got themselves noticed because of how they played in the bowl game. And we've also seen bowl games that have been so bad that you say to yourself, oops. I remember Chris Winkie against Oklahoma, Florida State, Oklahoma. That was for the national championship. And they looked like absolute crap. They lost 13-2. And one of the linebackers from Oklahoma was phenomenal in that game. Oklahoma's defense outplayed Oklahoma's offense. Oklahoma's offense all year long was the story. Florida State's offense was the story too. And they put up a stinker. And so that's the landscape of today's college football. As I said yesterday, it's a sad day because if you're Florida State, what are you playing for? Not playing for school pride. What are you playing for? Now, the quarterbacks for Florida State are going to play, but not the one that everyone wants to play because they're underclassmen. So they're not thinking about their draft status. They're not thinking about next year. Next year don't mean nothing to them in terms of going to the NFL. So they're not going to play. The kid from Georgia, the quarterback, he'll play because what's he got? He got another year of college. They got some running backs. They got a lot of receivers. They got a young team. They're going to be good for a couple of years. And they're probably going to kill Florida State because Florida State's not going to have their best team. Ohio State's quarterback, he'll play because he's a kid. He's a sophomore. He ain't going nowhere next year. But will Marvin Harrison Jr. play? They were high school teammates. And so, will he play? And so you say to yourself, that's the state of college football. And nobody cares. Nobody cares because the kids today, they are getting paid. They are signing contracts, deals, television commercials, local dealership commercials. They're getting paid. So what can you say? Kid don't want to play. He ain't gonna play. And that is why I prefer the sports of the 80s and 90s. Because I know that if I turn on a game in the 80s and 90s and teams are playing, that unless Marcus Allen is hurt, he's going to play. If Rocket Ismail ain't hurt, he's going to play. Darian Hagan is not hurt, he's going to play. Tommy Frazier going to play. And so now we got 39 games this year in bowls where you got to, if you're a betting person, you got to say to yourself, Is that kid a senior? Is he going to play? And do I want to risk my money? Because there's a strong chance that he's not going to play. And then you look at the matchups this year in the bowl games, kind of not good. We love the fact that Liberty is 13-0 and they're going to play in the Fiesta Bowl. Make that school $14 million. Love it. And they're going to play all their best players because they're playing Oregon. And they want to show the nation that they deserve to play as a representative of the small schools, schools who aren't in the Power 5 conferences. They deserve it. 13-0, hell yeah, they deserve it. But is Oregon going to play? Is Bo Nix going to play? Bo Nix, they said the other day, is going to make a decision if he's going to play or not. He don't know. And the fact now they don't got to have that answer for a couple of weeks. How do you promote that game? Ohio State's playing Missouri. Missouri's got a quarterback that people say has NFL ability. And so he'll probably play because he wants to show that his performance against Georgia or other SEC teams, he could play better against quality defense. We gonna find out. But all this stuff is so unknown. USC is playing Louisville. Does Caleb Williams want to play? Or do we start the new era with the new quarterback? It's an absolute no-brainer why I prefer the 80s and 90s to today. Because I have no idea what I'm going to get. All the kids who might be coming out this year. Do they want to take a chance? I know I'm being redundant over and over again because more kids keep popping into my head. Jalen Daniels from LSU, if he wins the Heisman Trophy, does he want to go out and prove anything and against Wisconsin? I mean, these are the millions of questions that the college football world can't answer like it used to, like we knew what we were going to get. Now, yeah, they may have had a screwed up system where they couldn't really figure out who was the national champion, but at least we know who the kids are going to play or not. And yeah, this is the first time in the history of the system where you had so many teams that were one loss worthy of champions or zero losses worthy of champions. And so, yeah, it's a hard decision. That's why they picked 13 as the number of people who make the decision, so that way the vote doesn't always come out even. So this bowl season, folks, check out Flam Flam Sports Travel, and I posted a bunch of bowl games on my page of actual games. Maybe you want to go see one live. I can help you get a flight, help you get tickets, help you get a hotel. enjoy the game, enjoy the experience, even though you might get cheated. In that the game that you might go see, you may not see Jackson Dart playing quarterback. I mean, their quarterbacks getting ready to transfer. They don't want to play one last game. Remember that kid last year from Coastal Carolina? He announced he wanted to transfer, and then at the last second decided to stay at school. Gonna get some of that too. But enjoy the bowls, folks. I'm gonna try. But that's why I prefer the sport today.